Digitization and technology is really important and holds great benefits. However, today I'm going to talk to you about how to hopefully avoid or mitigate the potential ticking time bomb of liability it can pose. My name's May Winfield, and I'm an associate director at Burr Happold. I'm a senior construction lawyer and a specialist in BIM and construction technology. I've spoken about this topic worldwide and co-authored a number of documents in this area, most recently the ISO 19650 Compliant Information Protocol. For those of you on Twitter, you can often see me debating these matters, and my Twitter handle's there. First, bit about Burr Happold. Well, Burr Happold believes that great design places people at its heart, and this has been a guiding principle since the practice was founded 40 years ago. And you can see on the screen there some of the really exciting projects that we've done. And we've earned a reputation, I believe, for creating environments that not only work for people, but also actively engage them and hopefully delight them. Just a few of the more digital technology things that we've been doing. So one of them, the analytics engine. So analytics is all about bringing technology and humans together. This tool turns data into evidence-based insights so that we can make informed decisions that result in better outcomes. Working in real time, we can interact with the engine, sketch over it, all the whilst getting live feedback on the effect of our changes, which, as you can imagine, it can be such a powerful tool for various purposes, and you can see the link there. Another one is BOM, or Building and Habitats Objects Model, which is open source. It's an industry-wide computational project aiming at supporting greater collaboration across the different professionals in the industry. Its purpose is to tackle the problem of interoperability between software, so we can transfer design models between platforms. And again, I've put a link there for those of you who are. But today we're going to be talking about a number of types of technology. And it's important to differentiate between the technologies which are real or up and coming and the ones which for now are possibly a bit fictional. And as you can see in that slide, there's some technologies, at least at the moment, a lot more realistic than others. So, focus on 6 different areas, and I will start with, and obviously with the 6, we'll also be focusing on a 7, which is the digital twins. And you can see there the roadmap, which you can find on the CDBB website, if for those of you who find that interesting. So, but first, I'll be starting with BIM. Now, for those of you who don't know, the reason you hear about BIM a lot is because in 2011, the government mandated the use of BIM in all centrally procured government projects by 2016. Because of the various benefits of BIM, you'll find that a lot of private projects, and particularly the large and more complex ones, also are mandating and requiring BIM. Over the course of the years since 2011, there's been various standards, there's been standard documentation that has been issued. Most recently, the UK standards, the PAS 1192 suite, are slowly being turned into international standards, the ISO 19650. You may have seen that a lot in the industry press. At the moment, there are 4 international standards, the Part 1, Part 2, Part 3, and Part 5. We also have a PAS 1192 Part 4. And you can find all that online. One thing, there's also an additional document. We prepared a transition guidance for which you can find on the BSI website, and that's to help the industry move from the old standards to the new ISO ones. There is available guidance, you'll be relieved to know, which there's a link there. You can also find on the UK BIM Framework website. There's a concepts one, which is really short, bite size. I would recommend you get your lawyers to read it. You don't really need to be very technical to understand it. There's also the part 2, which it goes into great more detail as to the different parts of the ISO 19650 and how they apply. In the part one, you'll find we prepared a legal section aimed at lawyers who probably don't really necessarily understand the technical side or the BIM processes, and to assist them in helping you and to draft contracts covering the relevant areas. As I mentioned earlier, there is an ISO 19650 compliant information protocol, and there's a link there on where you can find it. Next one, smart contracts. Now, as is often said, smart contracts are inspired by contracts, but are they smart or even a contract? And would a court uphold a smart contract as having a legal status, or is it just a computer code? Would a court consider it's been superseded by existing legal and contractual rules? The law will undoubtedly need to and will develop to reflect all this new technology and apply existing principles around it. But that is still something that you need to bear in mind, that the law is in a state of flux on this. I've put up there one of the probably numerous definitions of a smart contract, but this one I found the most helpful, being a smart contract being an automatable and enforceable agreement. And it's automable by computer, but also enforceable by either legal enforcement or via tamper-proof execution of computer code. Namely, you do still need some human interaction. It's not completely automated yet. And one day it might be as AI develops. A lot of the leading lights in blockchain and smart contracts have compared smart contracts to a vending machine. You put in your money and you get that packet of green M&Ms, whether you like it or not. And I've always liked that really simple definition for my very non-technical mind. For those of you who are interested in smart contracts, I will be talking further about it at the Construction Blockchain Consortium's conference, and you can find out more details of that on the CBC's website. Moving next to modular and DFMA. In the autumn budget of 2017, the Chancellor of the Exchequer made the point that there is going to be a real presumption in favour of off-site construction by 2019. And whilst this hasn't admittedly led to a huge adoption of off-site manufacturing, there has been a real development in this area and continues to do so because it makes sense in terms of time, in terms of money. But it does lead to a number of new issues, which I'll touch on a bit later. Turning to VR and AR, well, the Worldwide CAD Trend Survey of 2016 said that the use of virtual reality by CAD users and managers is increasing and was predicted to grow dramatically over the next 5 years. And certainly you do see more use of VR and AR. You see a lot of use of AR on site, for example. During site walkabouts, you see the use of this technology integrated generally with other things, such as with BIM models and so on. The Construction Manager BIM Plus survey in 2018 noted that 47% of respondents used AR or were beginning to use it, and 59% thought that AR and VR were likely to have significant impact on driving improved performance over the next 10 years. And it'll be interesting to see how this is impacted, say, by the situation we're in now, where more of us are remote working. It is more difficult to have meetings face to face. Next, robotics and AI. Now, AI is not, despite some concerns to the contrary, going to come and take our jobs. It enables us to work better. It enables us to have more time to do different things. One of the famous quotes is that AI is like the new electricity. And some examples of AI, Autodesk's first publicly available machine learning powered tool focused on construction. That's the BIM 360 IQ, which uses machine learning to predict and prioritize issues such as subcontractors' risks. And things like this have a huge potential to help health and safety, reduce risks, and improve efficiencies. Digital twins, which I mentioned earlier, you can find a digital twins roadmap on that link there. Now, digital twins is a varying number of definitions, but one of the most common ones is that it is a digital representation of a physical asset. I am a member of 4D Construction Group, and we recently recorded a podcast with the Digital Twins Fan Club about 4D and digital twins, and I recommend checking it out on the 4D Construction Group website if that's of interest. And again, that's the digital twins roadmap, and which is aimed at getting from the current state where there's no or very few digital twins to the future state where there will be a national digital twin in this country and all the steps in between to get there. So, having summarized all those digitizations and technologies, let's have a look at the common legal issues and risks. One being terminology and acronyms and jargon. It's often said that you can put up a whole load of acronyms, say of BIM, and all the people in the room, if they are into this area, will understand what you mean. But everyone outside the room who doesn't specialize it will think it is a completely foreign language. For a lot of the terminology used, there may not be a common industry standard definition. If you don't put, for example, a contractual definition of BIM or level 2 or digital twin, just saying, can you provide me some digital twins, or can you provide me some BIM, please? What you think it means and what the other person thinks it means will be quite different. Just like if you went in and asked a lot of people, so what is a digital twin? You probably get this expression. It helps to always, in the abundance of caution, if there's any doubt as to what you mean, do explain it, and explain it in writing, because the person you're talking to now isn't necessarily going to be the person reading your contract or looking at your work 2, 3, 5. Because ultimately, BIM acronyms like level 2, are they fact or are they fiction? Because, to be honest, they're kind of like unicorns. No one's actually seen one, but everyone's convinced they know what one looks like. It's important to remember that the transition guidance, in fact, pointed out that the standards, both the old ones and the new ones, weren't intended to do not provide a definitive, exhaustive definition of BIM level 2 or any other particular terminology or acronyms of BIM. And this applies to digitization generally. If you think about any terms that you're using, I would always recommend adding scope, adding a definition. One last one to give you an example is in the ISO 19650, there's the expression BIM according to the ISO 19650 series. And these are, it says in the transition guidance, it means stage 2. In the ISO 19650 Part 1, Section 4, it gives a longer definition, which you'll see there pretty much just says using information management processes to generate a federated information model. What does that actually mean? To me, as clear as mud. So be going the way of being clear in your legal documentation. What does it hurt? Next one is documents and obligations. What is binding? Now, what you'll find, certainly I've found over the years, is that a lot of technical documents that people are working to when it comes to digitization technology don't find their way into the contract. They may not even be mentioned in the contract. Why is that a problem? Well, if something goes wrong, then technically you're not bound to follow those. There will be issues as to what your actual contractual obligations were, whether a party breached it on a more practical level, where parties are working to a particular format, particular processes in a documentation, say a bet. They could very legitimately wake up one day and say, I don't want to work to those processes anymore. They're costing me too much. You will need to pay me more money, and you may have a difficulty there because they're not contractually obliged to comply with the processes unless they form part of their legal contractually binding. Here I put as an example, again, looking at BIM, the ISO 19650 Part 2. This is a flowchart I prepared with the author of ISO 19650 Part 2. And this is to show you how documentation can be quite complicated, but how important it is to make sure all the right bits form part of your contract. So here, as an example, you have the clients or the appointing parties exchange information requirements. So what do they want? And their project standards. You have the delivery team's BIM execution plan. So how are they delivering it? And then you also have the master information delivery plan. So again, how they're delivering their obligations. And I appreciate this has a lot of the BIM acronyms and terminology, which I warned you about earlier. But all those blue boxes at the bottom are things, documents and information should be reference documents within your actual contractual documents. And that can get, I appreciate, quite complicated and requires sitting down and working out where are these documents? Have they even been prepared yet? Are we referring to things that we're happy with the content, that we're happy with the particular version? All these things are worth thinking about. Next one is, what does the client actually want? Chances are, if it's quite cutting edge technology, it's new digitization, the client might not actually know what they want or not know how to articulate it. Hence, you may find some tenders which say, do some BIM, give me a digital twin, use some VR or AR in this project. It is always worth raising the question with the client if it's not clear what they want, just to make sure you understand, rather than halfway through a project finding you've misunderstood and the client's unhappy because they're not getting what they thought they were paying for. Next one is copyright. Copyright is obviously very important. And with these new technologies and digitization, there's new parts of technology which needs to be considered. So you may have new types of data. In a model, you'll have objects. You'll have the data that can be generated from a model, your cost data, your FM data. Who owns that? Which parts of the information and the data do you want to keep hold of? Where you're giving up copyright, do you want to keep copyright of your templates or particular parts of your coding? What is important to your business? It's worth thinking about that. You can't rely on your lawyers to advise you on this because they don't know necessarily what you're producing. As an example for BIM, as I mentioned, there's your BIM objects, you have the electronic data in the models, and then you have the models themselves, and the copyright in each may sit with different parties. The next one is process and data. Obviously, with technology and digitization, a lot of it's about fundamentally process. And this can take many forms. Using AI and smart contracts as an example, there may be problems can be caused in various different areas. You can have computer or human error, and who bears responsibility if you don't say in a contract you could have a long drawn out argument about it. In my experience, the disputes you have are often not about the parts of the contract which are clear, but generally the parts of the contract which are there gaps or are completely silent about a particular issue. So your view and the other party's view is different, where there are maybe certain parts of obligations which are not suitable for use of technology. So think of smart contracts in particular, clauses which require opinion or a viewpoint whether someone's exercised reasonable skill and care may be less suitable for smart contracts. And so it's worth thinking about when you've been asked to use a particular technology, does it suit the purpose? There's also personal data and GDPR issues. How will these be dealt with in terms of the use of your particular technology? And you do need to talk to your specialists and professional advisors on this. When it comes to smart contracts, there's also additional issues about legal standing, what enforceability. None of these things can't be overcome, but they need to be thought about rather than ending up a few years down the line having a dispute and not really having an answer to it. Next one is new roles and duties, and who's responsible for what. With all the different new technologies and digitizations, there's new scope, there's new obligations, there's new things that need to be done fundamentally. Who does those? Does it need a new person? Does an existing party carry out additional roles? What's the extent of their roles? And I always find a simple one in terms of resolving this is sitting down and writing down all the different things that need to be done and work out who's doing what, when, and how. Bringing it back to basics. And at that point, you're less likely to have a gap and in terms of activities and obligations and potential liability. So you don't have that long drawn out argument about this. The next one is potential new criminal and or civil liability. With the new roles, you might have unclear scope. If you've not clarified it, which leads to potential claims in terms of under your contract or otherwise. In some areas, there may be potential new criminal liability. Thinking of drones for example, you may have potential claims for trespass by your neighbors. You may have property damage. The drone drops something, the drone itself drops on someone, and then you have personal injury. There are various regulations behind drones and some of the other technologies that you need to comply with. So it's always worth checking it out, speak to a specialist, and don't just implement it without thinking that through. Because taking drones as an example, you can't just go across to the neighbors and take some pictures. Among other things, it's trespass, but that will obviously be a lot easier to avoid in places like this than in built up big cities, and working out how you mitigate that, putting in your contracts who should be responsible if it inadvertently happens. If you take pictures of people walking past the site and they take offense. Next one's insurance. Again, because digitization and some of these technologies are quite new, it's worth talking to your broker just in case to make sure your insurance covers you. Do you have sufficient cyber risk cover? Does your PI insurance cover you for the loss of the data if your server crashes? Taking modular and DFMA as a particular example, it's worth thinking, well, if something goes wrong at the different stages, whose PI policy responds? If there's a problem in the construction and the manufacturing of it, what happens if there's a problem when it gets transported to site? And then when it actually gets installed? It may have an impact on your insurance cover if you are using modular as part of the construction. And again, talk to your broker. They will be the best ones to advise you. In a lot of these areas, you'll find there are new forms of insurance, and it's worth checking these out. For example, there's a Build Offsite Property Assurance Scheme, a BOPAS, which is a risk-based evaluation which seeks to demonstrate to funders, lenders, valuers, and purchasers that homes built from non-traditional methods like DFMA and modular will stand a test of time of at least 60 years. So that was a very, very quick run through of a number of key areas of technology which you'll see already being implemented on site and in design in a very big way. And I've tried to highlight some of the key potential sources of dispute and disagreement and potential liability, which you can mitigate and avoid by way of clearer contractual obligations, via insurance, and via just sometimes just talking to make sure that you're all on the same page. And whilst I've given specific examples of technology for each of those potential liability risks, the big heads apply to all of them. But I would say this is not to say avoid using technology and digitization. Digitization and technology is a wonderful, powerful thing. It means we can do things better with better cost savings, better time savings, higher quality. However, with all new things, they come with new risks, and we can't just assume that the old way of processes and the old way of working suit the new processes and digitization that we're implementing. Found that useful, and if you're still awake and have any questions, do feel free to email me or send me a message on Twitter. For those of you particularly interested in BIM, I chair a group BIM for Legal and the contacts there, and we run events and issue details on Twitter about the legal and contractual side of BIM, trying to help widen people's knowledge in this very important area. Thank you very much.